Friends, neighbors, countrymen, lend me your ears. Tonight, we delve into a hypothetical situation, a scenario so outrageous, so ludicrous, so utterly bizarre, that it could only exist in the realm of political fiction. Imagine, if you will, a world where Canada, that gentle giant to our north, decides it's had enough of being America's gas station. Imagine a world where the maple syrup flows freely, but the oil, that lifeblood of the American economy, runs dry. Yes, my friends, tonight we explore the unthinkable. What if Canada shut off its oil supply to the United States? Before we descend into the chaos of this hypothetical oil embargo, let's first establish why this scenario would be such a big deal. The relationship between the United States and Canada is not just about friendly neighbors sharing the longest undefended border in the world. It's also about a deeply intertwined energy partnership that has significant implications for both nations. You see, Canada isn't just our friendly neighbor, it's also our biggest oil supplier. This partnership is built on decades of trust, cooperation, and mutual benefit. The oil that flows from Canada to the U.S. is a lifeline for many American industries and households. In fact, in 2023, over 60% of U.S. crude oil imports came from Canada. This isn't just a recent development, it's a trend that has been growing over the years. The sheer volume of oil that Canada supplies to the U.S. dwarfs that of any other country. That's more than 4.3 million barrels of oil flowing south every single day. Imagine the logistical marvel that is required to transport such a massive quantity of oil across borders, through pipelines and into refineries. It's a complex and highly coordinated effort. Now you might be thinking, John, surely America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, has other sources of oil, and you'd be right. The U.S. does import oil from other countries like Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Venezuela. However, none of these sources come close to matching the volume and reliability of Canadian oil. But here's the thing. U.S. refineries, especially those in the Midwest, are heavily reliant on Canadian heavy crude. This type of crude oil is particularly suited to the refining capabilities of these facilities. Over the years, these refineries have been optimized to process Canadian heavy crude efficiently. It's like they've developed a taste for the good stuff, eh? The specific characteristics of Canadian heavy crude make it a preferred choice for producing certain types of fuels and products. This specialization means that switching to a different type of crude would not be straightforward. So cutting off that supply would be like taking away a toddler's favorite binky. The immediate impact would be felt in the form of operational disruptions, increased costs, and potential shortages. The ripple effects would extend far beyond the oil industry, affecting transportation, manufacturing, and even everyday consumers. There would be tears, tantrums, and a whole lot of economic pain. The stock markets would react negatively, businesses would face higher operational costs, and consumers would likely see higher prices at the pump. The economic ramifications would be widespread and could potentially lead to a recession. This is why the U.S. Canada energy relationship is so crucial, and why any disruption to it would be a big deal. Let's talk about that economic pain, shall we? Imagine waking up one morning to find that the lifeblood of your economy has been cut off. That's what an oil embargo feels like. It's not just a minor inconvenience, it's a seismic event that sends shockwaves through every sector of society. If Canada were to suddenly slam the brakes on oil exports, the consequences would be immediate and far-reaching. We're talking about a scenario where the flow of oil, which is the backbone of many industries, comes to a grinding halt. The U.S. economy would feel the impact faster than you can say Justin Trudeau. The intricate web of energy connections between the two countries means that any disruption would be felt almost instantaneously. We're talking potential fuel shortages, skyrocketing gas prices, and a public outcry that would be impossible to ignore. Long lines at gas stations would become the norm, and the cost of filling up your tank would reach astronomical levels. And it's not just about personal inconvenience. Industries that rely on affordable energy would face a swift kick in the trousers. Manufacturing plants, industrial facilities, and power plants would all struggle to keep operations running smoothly. Remember the oil crisis of the 1970s? That was a time when the world got a harsh lesson in the importance of energy security. The long lines, the rationing, the economic downturn. It was a wake-up call for many. Yeah, this could be worse. The interconnectedness of today's global economy means that the ripple effects would be even more pronounced. Concerned citizens would face empty gas stations and a looming economic downturn. But it's not just the U.S. that would feel the pinch. Canada's economy, which relies heavily on oil exports, would also take a significant hit. The financial district would feel the tremors, and the overall economic stability would be at risk. Canada's economy, which relies heavily on oil exports, would also take a hit. The livelihoods of countless oil workers and the prosperity of regions like Alberta would be jeopardized. It would be like willingly jumping into an ice-cold lake in the middle of winter. The initial shock would be intense, but the long-term effects would be even more chilling. Sure, you might get a rush of adrenaline, a fleeting sense of excitement, but the reality would soon set in. The cold, hard truth is that both economies would be left shivering. But you're going to feel the chill for a long, long time. The aftershocks of such an embargo would be felt for years, if not decades, as both nations struggle to adapt to a new, harsher reality. Now, imagine the political firestorm that would erupt if America woke up one morning to find its oil taps running dry. Politicians would be scrambling like squirrels in a nut factory, pointing fingers, placing blame, and generally losing their minds. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the man with the biggest megaphone, the one and only Donald J. Trump, would be leading the chorus of outrage. The Oval Office would transform into a scene of utter pandemonium. You'd have advisors running in circles, phones ringing off the hook, and probably a few aides hiding under their desks. It would be a political meltdown of epic proportions, the likes of which haven't been seen since Nixon faced impeachment. Section 5. A House Divided, Canadian Reactions to the Oil Shutdown. Meanwhile, up in Canada, reactions to the oil shutdown would be mixed. Some, particularly labor leaders who have long advocated for using oil as leverage against the United States, would be cheering from the rooftops. They'd be breaking out the Timbits and poutine, celebrating their newfound bargaining power. But not everyone would be so thrilled. Alberta, the heartland of Canada's oil industry, would likely be in a state of panic. Politicians would be sweating bullets, oil executives would be tearing their hair out, and the average Albertan would be wondering if their retirement savings just went up in smoke. Section 6. Pipelines and Politics, the Tangled Web of Energy Exports. Now you might be wondering, John, how exactly could Canada just turn off the oil tap? Don't we have treaties, agreements, pipelines connecting our two nations? And you'd be right to wonder. See, it's not as simple as flipping a switch. For one, there's the small matter of the 1977 U.S. Canada Transit Pipelines Agreement, which basically says neither country can impede the flow of hydrocarbons across the border. Then there's the issue of provincial jurisdiction. In Canada, oil production falls under the purview of the provinces, not the federal government. So, you'd essentially have a constitutional crisis brewing faster than a double-double at Tim Hortons. Section 7. Beyond the American market, Canada's quest for diversification. But let's say, for argument's sake, that Canada does manage to overcome these legal and logistical hurdles. What then? Well, they'd be left with a whole lot of oil and nowhere to put it. Sure, Canada has been trying to diversify its oil exports, sending more crude to Asia through the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, but let's not forget about the Keystone XL pipeline, the project that was supposed to send even more Canadian oil south to the U.S. Remember that? President Biden canceled it on his first day in office, much to the chagrin of the Canadian government. Section 8. The Long-View Energy Security and International Relations. This hypothetical scenario, as outlandish as it may seem, highlights a crucial point. Energy security matters. Relying too heavily on one supplier, no matter how friendly they may be, can make a country vulnerable. It's like putting all your eggs in one very fragile, maple leaf-adorned basket. And it's not just about economics. Energy security is inextricably linked to international relations, foreign policy, and even national security. When countries depend on each other for essential resources, it can create complex interdependencies that can be both a blessing and a curse. Section 9, a hypothetical crisis, a real debate, so there you have it. The hypothetical yet utterly fascinating scenario of Canada shutting down its oil supply to the U.S. Imagine the ripple effects this would have on both nations. The U.S., heavily reliant on Canadian oil, would face immediate challenges. Gas prices could skyrocket, affecting everything from transportation to the cost of goods. The economic impact would be profound, potentially leading to a recession. Would it ever actually happen? Probably not. The interdependence between the two countries is too strong, but it's a scenario worth pondering. What if political tensions escalated to the point where Canada felt compelled to take such drastic action? The consequences would be far-reaching. But does it make for a compelling thought experiment, with real-world implications for energy security, international relations, and the delicate balance of power between two neighboring nations? Absolutely. Energy security is a critical issue, and this scenario highlights the vulnerabilities in our current systems. It also underscores the importance of maintaining strong diplomatic relations. You bet your bottom dollar it does. The stakes are incredibly high. Both countries would have to navigate a complex web of economic, political, and social challenges. The U.S. might seek alternative sources of oil, but that would take time and resources. Meanwhile, Canada would also face economic repercussions, as the U.S. is its largest oil customer. Now let's hear what you think. This is a debate that involves everyone. How do you see this hypothetical crisis playing out? What measures should both countries take to prevent such a scenario? Your opinions matter, and we want to hear them. Would Canada ever really turn off the oil tap? It's a drastic measure, but in a world where geopolitical tensions are always simmering, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. What would drive Canada to make such a decision, and how would it justify it to the international community? How would the U.S. cope? The immediate impact would be severe, but the U.S. is a resilient nation. It would likely accelerate efforts to become more energy independent, investing in alternative energy sources and technologies. But the short-term pain would be significant, affecting everything from the stock market to everyday life. And most importantly, who would win in a hockey match between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the New York Rangers? While this might seem like a lighthearted question, it underscores the deep cultural ties between the two nations. Sports often serve as a unifying force, even in times of political tension. Sound off in the comments below. We want to know your thoughts on this hypothetical crisis. How do you think it would unfold? What are the potential solutions? Your insights could add valuable perspectives to this ongoing debate. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking content, and join the conversation. Your engagement helps us bring you more in-depth analyses and discussions on critical issues.